Hello and welcome, my friends and viewers, to this week's episode of Legendlore, where I draw and talk about monsters, characters, gods, and other things from D&D 5th edition, all while giving a small but quickly digestible history about them. Together we'll go over their history within the game, how they're utilized in the modern edition, and how you guys can utilize them in your own games. This week we'll be delving back into the dark with Meazels, the gloomy, garrote-carrying recluses of the Shadowfell. Getting right into it, despite the Shadowfell being a place mostly filled with undead and some negative energy elementals, Meazels were actually evil humanoids, usually having wholly black or white eyes, mops of twisted stringy dark hair, clawed hands with webbed fingers, and had skin that ranged from corpse gray to venomous green. The most common warning sign of them, however, was the presence of red blotches over approximately 85% of their body, believed to be caused by a skin disease that gave them the appearance similar to people suffering from leprosy. History states that the first Meazels were created centuries ago, when a city was ravaged by a plague that caused insatiable eternal hunger that killed people in days. At the peak of the disease's rampage, a voice offered the survivors both a limitless food supply and immunity to death from the plague, and those who made the deal found themselves cursed by the 7th Duke of Hell, the archdevil Beelzebul. He was true to the letter of his word, as these proto-Meazel would never die from their affliction, but forever suffer from its effects in the form of endless hunger and monstrous blotches on their skin. And they were absolutely offered an eternal food supply, but only in the form of the flesh of sentient humanoids. Normal food could not satisfy a Meazel's hunger, and so they were cursed to hunt and kill the living in order to find respite from their unending starvation. There also existed subtypes of Meazel that were created without the aid of Beelzebul, primarily when individuals spent too much time within the Shadowfell and its energies began to twist and stain their souls. Though how the two occurrences relate to one another is a matter of debate. Who knows, maybe the aforementioned city that Beelzebul preyed upon was originally in the Shadowfell. As a result of their eternal plague, or Beelzebul's fiendish curse, the original Meazels were immune to almost all other diseases, and their very presence caused those around them to be weakened the longer they remained, almost as if the Meazel could sap life essence by just being nearby. Their blood was also notably painful to touch, capable of contaminating others with their disease upon blood-on-blood contact. Later iterations of Meazels would actually infect others by just using their claws, and Shadowfell-specific Meazels were capable of teleporting via the use of shadows, but the most common weapon that Meazels used were garrote wires, allowing them to capture and strangle their prey quietly, without damaging the meat too much and allowing them to consume it later. Shadowfell Meazels were also capable of inflicting a simple hour-long curse on their victims, which caused undead and other Shadowfell creatures to be drawn to their location. This often would ensure that the target was killed even if they managed to escape from the Meazel, allowing it to simply stalk after the victim until some other monster or undead did the dirty work and moved on. In terms of their biology, behaviors, and culture, when not encountered in the Shadowfell, Meazels were often found in marshes, subterranean caves, and even urban sewer systems anywhere where it was dark, damp, and cold, which was ideal for their affliction. They were capable of reproducing normally, with 1 or 2 whelps being born and reaching maturity after about 6 years. But beyond that, Meazels were often reclusive and kept themselves isolated, even from their own kind. This often resulted in them being terrible allies, either by being genuinely untrustworthy or just by being a hell of a downer to be around. Some exceptions include undead, who fed on the essence of living creatures that were not flesh, such as vampires who drank blood or liches who consumed souls, allowing the Meazel to devour the rest undeterred whilst gaining a powerful ally. The mixture of self-imposed exile and people's distinct attempts to avoid them meant that Meazels were also skilled thieves, often capable of stealing whatever they couldn't build or grow themselves, which ranged from common baubles and finery to weapons, armor, and even pets in order to make their hunting easier to engage in. In fact, Meazels had a distinct penchant for keeping beasts as hunting companions, such as drakes, giant spiders, shadow mastiffs, displacer beasts, or even elementals bound by conjuration or abjuration magic. With this in mind, while your more charismatic and empathetic players might try their hardest to befriend a Meazel, its being cursed to eat mortal flesh to alleviate its pain, as well as its frequent bad experiences with people fearing or trying to kill it, will make them wary to trust another creature that is not of their own ilk or not native to the area. A Meazel might be willing to try and manipulate this friendly mortal into a position of weakness to kill or steal from it, but the only way to truly gain a Meazel's trust would require breaking its curse and truly freeing it from its endless agony, which would require some powerful magic and risk the PCs getting on Beelzebul's radar. Meazel were also known to practice various types of religion, worshipping gods such as Loviatar, Beshava, Shar, and Bane, just to name a few due to their portfolios including suffering, pain, and struggle. They were also known to align with non-deific entities such as maligned Fae of the darker Fae courts, or distinct enemies of Beelzebul such as the Archdevil Levistus. And finally, due to their curse of eternal suffering and agony, Meazels were also known to turn to the path of necromancy in order to become undead themselves, training the need to consume flesh for souls, which can result in some pretty interesting Meazel variants of undead, such as Meazel Shadows, Death Knights, and maybe even Liches. In terms of magical components that one can extract from killing Meazels, the pickings are a bit slim, but I do have a couple ideas that you guys can use. Their hair might be useful when properly treated as a component for potions of invisibility or even shadow-focused spells such as Shadowblade. You can also truly embody your chaotic evil side by dipping your arrows in Meazel blood to spread its disease to those wounded by them. This way you can allow your creatures to just delve into full war crime mode when they're encountering your players and enacting their evil plans. Speaking of which, when it comes to running Meazels in combat, here are a couple of different approaches that you can take as a dungeon master. The most common strategy that I've seen used is to have them lie in wait, use their garrote wires to grapple and strangle individual party members, and then teleport away with their quarry so as to inflict them with their undead attracting shadow curse. Doing so will require the failure of several checks and saves, however, but can be very excellent for making off with your wizard or cleric before they can get any meaningful spells off, as well as upping the difficulty factor by having undead and other Shadowfell creatures close in upon them over time. For a higher level of challenge, your Meazels can be accompanied by a single or multiple hunting companions, which can vary depending on the area that they're encountered. When found in swamps or marshes, I recommend black or green drakes, giant spiders, or even froghemus if you really want to be fucking mean. Likewise, in the Shadowfell, you can have Death Dog or Shadow Mastiff bloodhounds, stealthy displacer beasts or shadow asps, cataplebus mounts, or flying creatures such as deep crows and cloakers. All of these can help vary your Meazel encounters, especially if your campaign primarily takes place in the Shadowfell, or if your party's shenanigans end up taking them there. Beyond these strategies, you can also have them make use of their own blood as poison for their arrows or blades. And then there's the idea of utilizing shadow-aligned classes to accentuate their abilities, such as Shadow Sorcerers, Twilight Clerics, and so on and so forth. This helps relate into creating NPCs and quests for Meazels. They don't have much in terms of what they actually want, at least anything that a decent D&D party would agree to help out with, unless you're running a straight evil party or have a villain that your party hates enough. If those two prerequisites aren't met, they're not going to help a Meazel feed on some living soul, even if the people that they end up eating would be evil themselves. With that said, here are a couple of specific ideas for NPC dynamics and plot hooks that you guys can use with Meazels in your games. First off, we have the hunting team, where a Meazel and a vampire have formed a pact in order to make the most out of the people they hunt, the vampire feeding on the blood, whereas the Meazel feeds on the flesh, with them perhaps tossing the bones to a local necromancer for further recyclability. I like this dynamic because you can have several sub-relationships within it, such as one being a martial class while the other is a caster to cover all their bases, or the two of them being the same class for a dynamic duo edge. And while most vampires and Meazel may form a partnership only out of necessity or proximity, perhaps they begin to form some sort of trusting bond with one another, even if they're killing people and feeding off their corpses. Perhaps if your PCs encounter and kill one of the pair, they draw the eternal ire and vengeance of the other who hunts them relentlessly for future sessions. For this, I definitely recommend calling upon classes such as the Way of Shadow Monk, Gloomstalker Rangers, or Phantom Rogues. Or you could take the Loud and Proud approach with Shadowfell-themed Wild Magic Barbarians or Echo Knights who can conjure clones out of shadows. Next we have the Undead Meazel, which, as it says on the tin, is a Meazel who sought their freedom from their curse and eternal suffering by turning themselves to undead. The level of which can range from a simple shadow at lower tier games to a full-on lich for more epic campaigns. This can roll into a further plot where the Meazel conjures a legion of zombies or skeletons to scour the swamps or Shadowfell in search of living sentient creatures, before overwhelming them and bringing them back to their lair for later consumption. This way the Meazel does not have to risk its own skin and can feed or collect souls, and you can even have this undead Meazel lich become the ruler over a small cadre of other Meazel, promising food, protection, and even eternal undeath in exchange for loyalty. For this, I would recommend calling on classes such as the Twilight or Death Cleric, Swampland or Spore Circle Druids, Shadow Sorcerers, Undead Warlocks, and Necromancy Wizards. And finally, there is the Meazel Ranger, which is just taking an animal companion and sticking it onto the Meazel for a bit of additional flavor. You can go for the classic man and dog trope with Shadow Mastiffs, Death Dogs, or even Hellhounds if you really want to bring the hurt, while predators like Displacer Beasts or Cloakers can lean very well into the Meazel's penchant for stealth kills. For the big guns, perhaps a Meazel Drake Warden Warlord can harass your party either alongside a Black Drake or even atop the back of a Shadow Dragon. As to what they're looking for or how they even came to form this bond with one another, that's entirely up to you as a Dungeon Master. Now, in terms of magic items that could be made out of Meazel components or could be found on their bodies as loot after defeating them, I personally stick with mostly necrotic damage dealing weapons, Shadowfell flavored items, and those that can emulate the Meazel's abilities, such as the Cape of the Mountebanks Dimension Door ability mimicking their Shadow Teleport. I've also included all the books and page numbers that these items can all be found on. And for our homebrew magic item this evening, we have Meazel Blood, as we discussed before, a potent poison that can be useful for tracking foes and ending sieges. Meazel Blood has a DC 12 medicine check needed to apply it to a weapon if you do not have the Poisoner feat, and once applied, it deals an additional 1d6 poison damage on a successful hit. The target must also make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw, or become infected with the Meazel disease, where large lesions begin to spread across their skin and they begin to accrue 1 level of exhaustion each day that they don't pass a DC 18 Constitution saving throw. Additionally, creatures of the undead subtype are attracted to them, which grants them advantage on all checks to find them, and all attack rolls made against them until the disease is cured are also made an advantage. If a cleric or some other form of disease curing is not able to be accessed by the players, they could opt to enter into the Shadowfell where the disease will change and mutate, allowing the person who is afflicted to live and survive, but at the expense of turning them into a Meazel. This can give you some interesting decisions, drama, and avenues for quests, as one of them is infected with the disease and now the party has to try and find a way out to cure it. I've included the item stat block in the description below, as well as a couple of Meazel stat blocks to provide a little bit of variety for your guys' tables, all developed using the MCDM action-oriented monster design. This includes my own personal version of the Meazel, as well as a Meazel Blackhand and Shadow Shot, which I hope you guys find interesting enough to drop into one of your own tables. And with that, that's our coverage of the Meazel, everybody. I want to thank all of you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and press the little bell icon to be notified of future videos. If you guys want a chance to vote on the future content that comes out of this channel, please check out the community tab, and also please follow us on other social media such as Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, and so on and so forth. And also check out some of the merch that we have with the art pieces that we've been developing. And also, Dungeon Masters, please let me know how you guys like to use Meazels in your games, and players tell me how you guys have encountered Meazels in your games, and also let me know what you guys would like to see in upcoming videos. But until then, I'll see you guys next time.